We have a really specific focus helping high-performing leaders, just like all of you, do one thing: prepare for the future of work.
I'm in it just to rewrite history, cause I'm in the mood to label us the leaders of the new school.
You're never gonna meet anybody who has more vision, more enthusiasm, Mr. Seth Mattison.
Victorious.
Let's go, let's get into this. Let's go. What are the timeless leadership skills and competencies that are going to be most relevant, that I can count on, that will always be important? Barriers to entry have never been lower for entrepreneurs and individuals to contribute, to communicate, to have a say. A future maker is an individual who looks at the infinite possibilities of potential paths forward into the future and clearly identifies this is the path forward. They were doing it to create an elevated experience for the talent, for the people inside the practice and the business, so that they could attract great talent, so they could keep great talent, and so that ultimately they could create a competitive advantage in the marketplace by delivering a better experience to their clients. The experience the brand creates for its customers, it mirrors the experience leaders create for their employees. Leadership is about influence and how power gets used, and is it tightly held or is it distributed and allowed to flow so that you can ignite people in a culture around a movement? Fight to give that to your people. Fight to provide that for this community. Those that can give without expectation, they win the long game. And that's the only way we start to shift this ecosystem out of a mindset of scarcity and into a mindset of what? Abundance. It's not about liking people, you have to love people. Some of you are thinking, dude, I don't even really love my family that much. You're asking me to love my staff? I know you're thinking this. Yes, love.
I was made for this.
I'm telling you today, you can't be a leader unless you love people. This is a defining moment of change for you. So then the question arises, how do I transform into the next version of myself to lead us through this defining moment? Did I do one thing today to progress forward? How do I change fast enough? What are the new skills and competencies I have to be learning to stay relevant to this? We shape the future with our intention, our beliefs, and our mindsets. Because the decisions that you're making now are not just the decisions for yourselves. You're making impacts and leaving a mark on the land that will have legacy implications for decades, if not centuries to come. Three things that the best of the best do. All right, are you with me? We're going to cover these three. So the first, future-making imperative. Authenticity, authentic, unfortunately, is a word that's gotten used so much, it's freaking meaningless today. How many of you would agree with that? Like if you hear one more person saying, oh, you got to be authentic, we just roll our eyes. But is authenticity important? Absolutely it is. But how do I get it to a place that people could actually buy into it and believe it? That's the question, and that is the word. Do you believe it? Do you believe? Do you believe? When leaders ask me, Seth, how do I get my people to care? How do I get my people to buy in and believe the vision? This is one of the most important lessons that I've had to learn in my work. You cannot make anyone believe anything. You can't. You can't make people care. I can't make you in this room right now care about what we're talking about. I can't make you believe. All we can do as leaders is communicate what we believe, right, with enough clarity and enough conviction that it gives other people an opportunity to stand up and say, what? I believe what you believe, brother. Or I aspire to believe what you believe. That's it. And instead of getting frustrated that why can't, a lot of times we hear that about the younger generation. There's no fire, there's no passion, why don't they care? Every sentence that you start with that doesn't begin with I takes away your power. You start every sentence with, what do I have to do to convince others to believe in this? How do I articulate with more clarity and more passion and more conviction about this future state? That leads you to a place of authenticity. Number 2, differentiated. How does my value proposition differ from the competition? Again, go to their websites. See if they even are communicating a value proposition to the marketplace. Pick them up, call in, see if you can get a sales professional or a customer service person to articulate a value proposition to you and see how different, if it is at all, from your own. How do we differentiate it? And third and finally is compelling. Compelling, it simply means we move someone to take action. If we can't make someone ultimately take action in the moment, it's not compelling enough. We go to work. 3 keys. This is the second of the 3 future-making imperatives. The first, understanding the neuroscience of change, right? The second, harnessing the power of future casting, both with our vision internally as well as with our value proposition to the marketplace. For the owner-operators in the room for a second, just stop and think. What would it feel like in your organization and in your culture if you looked around at your squad and every single person on the team could clearly communicate your vision for the organization and nail a value proposition that's strong and clear to the marketplace? What would that feel like for you? What would that do for us? What kind of momentum would that create for us? Right? That's where we start. Where I want to take you is to shift just from thinking about customer experience into employee experience. And own that as leaders. The idea of employee experience cannot just be a conversation that happens in HR circles or people that are heading up talent and people. Experience has to be owned by leaders. Because the experiences that we're looking for in our personal lives are influencing our professional lives. 2 things have happened that influence us as leaders in the last 18 years. Number 1, our appetite and our willingness to pay a premium for a better experience has only continued to elevate. You think about what you're willing to pay a premium for today for a better experience. Give me an example. What's something you'll pay a premium for a better experience? Daycare, great example. What else? A flight, better seat, upgrade. How about the reclining seat movie theater where they bring you the cocktails? Are you with me on this? I think this is one of the greatest inventions in the history of the world. Sign me up for this. If you haven't been, you haven't lived, right? Even though the chicken fingers are terrible, but just like the thought in the chair, right? I gladly paid 3x the ticket price. Our appetite has increased. But the other thing that's happened that impacts us as leaders as it relates to hierarchy and network over the last 20 years. You think back, it wasn't that long ago. Hierarchy sort of represents historical work. Work was a physical place that we could go to and work. And when you left work. And now you're in your personal life. And today, the lines between work and life, where are they? They even exist? The whole idea of work-life balance assumes that they're 2 separate things. It's all one. For most of us, what's the very first thing you do in the morning when you wake up? You roll over and what do? You turn the alarm off on your phone, and what's the very next button you hit? All right, let's not lie to each other. Remember, truth-telling culture. Facebook, Instagram, then email, right? Let's not lie. But still, it's like 5:30. I'm already plugged in. I haven't even left the bed yet. I'm already working. What's the last thing we do before we go to bed at night? Check in one more time, right? One more time. And just out of curiosity, I don't know if this exists in this culture, but a lot of our clients, they get caught up in playing the who can send the latest email game. Are you familiar with this game? It's like it's 9:45. All of a sudden, like Terry sends an email. You're like, damn, Terry, working late. What do? It's like 11:30 before you go to bed. You're like, boom, send one out right on top of her. Right? I have some clients, they are so sick They set the auto delay responder to go out at like 3 a.m. So it looks, right, 3 a.m. pinging. And when we do that, what are we saying to the world? I'm still hustling, I'm still grinding. I heard somebody say, I'm better. I'm better. Maybe. It's all one thing. And so here's the point from an experience standpoint. Our life, work, personal, professional, it's all one thing, which means if your work experience sucks, your life sucks. You cannot separate. And so how we shape and articulate as leaders the experience people have has never mattered more. Why don't we? Is it because it's easy to just stay in our smaller role? It's easy to do what we've always done, execute in a comfortable fashion that we all know. To do something new, to become this larger version of yourself requires what? Change and transformation. It requires, first and foremost, seeing ourselves in a different light. You're being called right now, if you're in this room, if you decided to come, you see there's empty seats in this room, right? Which means some of your colleagues made the decision and the choice not to come. You came. I don't exactly know why you decided I would show up this morning, but by default, you are choosing yourself to step into this role that we call and have defined a future maker. Now, what is a future maker? A future maker, as it says, is a person responsible for creating the future and inspiring others to do the same. We create the future. We are not bystanders. We are not on the sidelines. We are not victims. To challenge yourself to step into this larger, more expanded role. Who told you along the way that you should play small? Who told you along the way that all you had the capacity and capability to do was be a team player and an executor? You can be that. You can execute flawlessly while simultaneously challenging and creating the future. You can do both. But if you're going to do that, we've got to have some understanding, a higher order knowledge and perspective as to how the world of work and leadership is evolving and changing. One of my favorite quotes comes from Otto Scharmer out of MIT. He said, before we can create an external shift in our organizations, an internal transformation must first occur within ourselves, shifting the inner state. When I say shifting the inner state, what do we mean by that? It's about essentially connecting to something larger than yourself. And whatever you want to call that, God, source, the universe, your intuition or your imagination, your higher self, it's about accessing this deep, profound wisdom that lies within you, that no one outside of you can give you, that I can't give you, that only you have. Now, how does that manifest? What would be an example of that? Well, I was sitting backstage listening to the final comments on the panel. There was a lot of discussion around this idea of thinking about where you need to be in 10 years, right? In 10 years, who do we have to become to stay relevant? How do I close the gap? How do we collectively close the gap between where we are today and where we will be in 10 or 15 years? Here's the challenge. Here's how we end up staying stuck, myself included. And it plays out in how we make decisions. Because between here and in the next 10 years, it is going to be about decisions that we make. Every decision we make about who we become, what happens in the business. And we stay stuck because we keep making decisions based on who we are today or who we have been yesterday. And when we keep making decisions based on who we are today, it prevents us from being able to grow into the future. So this idea of how do we future pace our current decision making, Right? How do I start to become that version of myself now? How do I close the gap? And we can future pace our current self by asking a very simple question. What would the future version of myself choose in this situation? What would the future version of myself choose in this situation? Right? We have to start operating as that 10 and 15-year older version of ourselves right now. Six months ago, I was preparing for a huge event in my career, and I've got I don't know if you could call him a coach, concilier, therapist. If you cry to the person, I don't know if they're still considered your coach or a therapist, but let's just say that's what he is. And I only had 15 minutes with this room full of leaders, and he said, what's the one thing you want them to take away from that time with you? And I said, bottom line, if they only leave with one thing, I just want them to remember who they are. And he said to me without pause, he said, great, that's beautiful, Seth. Who are you? And I said, shit. Who am I? Now, we have spent time with leaders dissecting this answer. I am the creator of my reality. What does that give you? What does that do for you? How empowered is that? I want you to think about if every single person in your agency operated from an identity, a state of I am the creator of my reality. I own all of it. I start every sentence with I, not you, not we, not they. They screwed me over. They did this. You didn't do this for me. Every sentence starts with I, especially as leaders. We have a recruiting problem. We have a retention issue. Brother, it's not we, it's you. You have a retention issue. Every sentence that you start with that doesn't begin with I takes away your power. Here's what I took away from this work, what I discovered, because it made me really evaluate my own values for our organization. I felt pretty good about it, is that for most of the organizations I interact with, and if I'm truthful with myself, it was true for mine, our values have become so sanitized, they have lost their soul. They're meaningless. They're empty words. Do you know how many companies I work with that have the values of integrity, honesty, hard work, execution? Wow. Integrity just moves my soul. It makes me want to drop everything and come across town to work for you. You believe in integrity. I've had to totally reevaluate my own values to say, do they speak truth to move people? Now, I'm not telling you to blow up your values. All I'm telling you is to look at it and say, does it speak in a way that stirs the soul? I have an opportunity there. Experience is the frontier. And when I looked at the top performing brokers we interacted with, what did they have for a value that was universal across the board? Was this word. Abundance kept showing up. And do you know why it was abundance? Because those who understood that the future was team-based, that it was about the collective, that it was a supportive environment. It wasn't a dog-eat-dog world, that it was an agency, a brokerage that supported one another. You cannot create an environment of support if people don't operate from a mindset of abundance. How do you create an environment where agents are willing to help each other, willing to pour into each other? Is they have to believe in their soul that there is more than enough to go around. That by me helping you, doesn't take anything away from me. I'm gonna get mine. I'm gonna be able to take care of my family. How does abundance manifest for you in your organization? It has to start with yourself. If you operate from a state of scarcity, it will bleed into the rest of your organization. I've gotten really good at accepting the minimum amount of freedom possible in this role. I don't even push against the edges anymore. But yet we'll come here and we're going to talk about something like deploying a disruptive mindset. Can you deploy a disruptive mindset if you don't feel free? Yes or no? No, absolutely not. And so we can just pretend like, hey, let's talk about really fun ways to be disruptive and innovative, but we're just lying to ourselves. I mean, we really are. If I don't feel personally free, and if I don't feel free, and please let this sink in. Gang, if you don't feel free as leaders, how in the world are you going to make your people feel free? Freedom is one of the most deeply held desires we have as human beings. We want to expand and grow, but we keep getting confined down into little boxes, and that little voice inside of our head, partially maybe to manage expectations, we don't want to feel disappointed anymore. It starts to become our new reality. It's like if someone asks you, how much joy would you like to have in your life? How much love, how much goodness would you like to have in your life? What should our answer be? A lot. All of it, a lot. That's a good answer, a lot, right? Like, I want all of it. Give me all the joy. Give me all the goodness. But we sort of pause and we say, well, you know what? I don't know because I've gotten really good at accepting the minimum amount of joy. The minimum amount of like a happiness and goodness. I've learned how to survive on that. Simple, powerful question to take back to your people. Right? We want to look for all of these really complex techniques and strategies for how to attract the next great generation of workers. And again, not just youth. Tell me all of the different tactics. How about just start with this? How do I inject more freedom into my teams as a leader? Because if I did that, do you know how fast that will reverberate throughout your organization and your industry? If you are a leader that helps people feel safe and free, you will never have a recruiting problem. Ever. Because you're tapping into one of our deepest human desires.